Welcome back. We're now bringing together all of our guests from the broadcast for a more comprehensive discussion of what Anton Black's case tells us about policing in America, how we can learn from it, and perhaps get police reform back on the national agenda. Joining me again are Rebecca Brown of the Innocence Project, Professor Butler of Georgetown University, Jason Johnson, president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, and former D.C. medical examiner, Dr. Roger Mitchell. Welcome back to all of you. Paul, let me start with, I want to hit sort of four pillars here. But one thing you brought up early, and it was something I was going to bring up had you not brought it up, and it was because it was really almost like the first sentence of the Obama administration's task force on 21st century policing. It came out in May of 2015, and it said this: law enforcement culture should embrace a guardian rather than a warrior mindset to build trust and legitimacy, both within agencies and within the public. The idea is the warrior is your soldier. They fight your wars. The guardian are members of your community. They protect you.
And if you think about somebody who's applying for a job to be a guardian, they have a whole different skill set than people who want to be warriors. Guardians want to take care of communities. They want to talk to people and work with them. From today's conversation, it can sound like we're talking about a bad apple cop, but I think that that's only one of the problems. Most cops serve with integrity, but U.S. cops still kill 1,000 people a year. That hasn't changed since George Floyd. And so when we're talking about reform, we have to think about transformation and change, including workplace culture, getting away from that warrior mentality.
It starts with the how you recruit, doesn't it, Jason? Like the type of folks you recruit. There is this feeling over the last 20 years of almost militarizing our local law enforcement.
Well, we need not just guardians. We need one person who can fill both roles depending on the circumstance. It's almost impossible to find. If we have officers responding to an active shooter incident or an act of terrorism or any act of violence that requires officers to bravely enter and take appropriate action, that requires both roles.
Right.
I'll say a lot of this conversation about police reform is actually driving people out of the profession. It's not because we're looking at reform, but it's the idea, it's the tenor of the conversation, the fact that it's controversial, it's divisive. It's running people out of the profession, and the line of people that want to come in is very short. So I think we have to be mindful of the fact that the conversation we're having about police reform or improvement is going to inform a young person who maybe is interested in serving in a guardian role in law enforcement. If they feel that they're entering something that's divisive, that's made up of people that are racist thugs, they're not going to do it.
Or if you have a job where you have to follow rules, if you're licensed to kill and have to be careful about how to use that power, if you have concerns about that, you should not be a police officer.
No, I certainly didn't say that. I think that police officers absolutely should be well-trained, should follow the rules. And I don't think that's an issue. And I don't think that's pushing people out of the profession, by the way. I think that the fact that police officers today are presumed guilty, presumed bad, if there's a viral video of any sort of controversial police action, it seems like it's the police officer that's presumed to have done something wrong. That pushes people out. The public policy that follows it, that pushes people out. So following the rules and being subject to training is really not the issue.
Rebecca, go ahead.
I think it's largely, you talked about culture, right? The culture within the law enforcement agencies, culture within those local law enforcement agencies. Yes, we can take our cues from some of these outliers is what we're talking about, but also some of the sustained racism that we may see in law enforcement. But if we're willing to change the culture and really work towards changing the culture of policing, towards this guardian mindset, and reward community that lives in community, that loves community, that operates in community, and have those same people want to be the law enforcement in community versus people coming from outside communities policing those communities, that mindset of guardian is easier than you would think.
I'll be honest, Rebecca, I'm hearing echoes of we have this debate about we want a different skill set in our teachers and all of this stuff. And when you think about both teachers and cops, we're suddenly asking them to do a whole lot of things now. And oh, by the way, we haven't given them a raise. And we don't pay them. We want them to have all of these skills, but they don't feel like they're rewarded to have those skills. Is that a problem?
Well, I think there's just an issue, too, of expecting police to be emergency responders to every kind of event, right? And they're certainly better equipped people to deal with people in mental health crises. And so I think, you know, and by the way, this would be an excellent issue for unions to take up in terms of protecting their workforce. I think, you know, they don't, you know, instead of sort of fighting accountability measures and fighting transparency measures, I think unions would do well to look at, you know, what is being asked of law enforcement and thinking about, does this even make sense? Are there better responders for some of these types of events?
For me, there's no doubt that we're putting too much on law enforcement. I believe in an all-government approach, and to let the public health institutions in government, to let the Department of Behavioral Health off the hook for their responsibilities to community, I think is poor government.
Should we not call them? I mean, I don't want to get into the name stuff because then everybody has a politicized debate, but it's just about public safety at the end of the day. Sometimes public safety, you know, is a health crisis.
Absolutely. And as everyone around the table, I think, agrees, police officers have become public safety generalists. No matter what it is, we expect law enforcement to be able to respond to it. And that's not really what they're fit for.
But should it be? I guess that's what I mean. I mean, like, should we rethink this?
You're never going to get police entirely out of the mental health business just because of the nature of what police do. But they can be sort of second responders, you know. So the front line are mental health professionals, and the police are there to deal with protecting the public in that very narrowly defined role.
All right, Paul.
90% of calls that cops get, 90% of 911 calls are about people who are in a relationship crisis, mental health crisis, a beef between family members or neighbors, someone who's experiencing homelessness. When people with guns and batons and the power to arrest show up, often that makes things worse, not better. Even Republican administrations, President Trump, he agreed that there ought to be co-responders, not just the folks with guns, to those types of situations.
Let's talk about some simple. Police reform has died a couple of times in Congress. It does seem like simple things that shouldn't be hard to do. Your checkbox.
Oh, my
goodness. Why has it been difficult?
Well, I think it's really not holding our public health infrastructure responsible for the public safety of our citizenry. To suggest that there's some disconnect between public health and public safety. You know, I'm a medical examiner, physician, but I also served as interim deputy mayor for public safety and justice for Washington, D.C. Because there's a need to connect the dots. This checkbox on the U.S. standard death certificate allows for a death certificate that has to occur in all deaths in custody. It's going to occur. For us to merely know that that individual died in custody, we can start understanding from a very basic level who, how, and why people are dying.
Can I just say, if the question is why we haven't seen national change, it's a two-word answer: the Republicans. It's Senator Scott, a Republican, and Senator Booker, a Democrat, were supposed to work something out about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, just common sense reform. It failed not because of politics or the Democrats. It failed because Republicans did not have the courage and will to do life-saving work that would make police officers respond more effectively, help community safety.
I just don't think the problem with the police reform debate is that we don't agree on what the problem is. We don't agree on what the problem is. And I think a lot of people have been resistant to facts when we put data about how many millions of calls police respond to, how infinitesimally small the number of times that police officers use deadly force, use the number 1,000, but that's among a sea of police responses. And it doesn't take any account for what the circumstances were. It's just a number. And so if we can't agree on that, we can't move forward.
Well, we spent an hour on it. We got a lot more debate to do, but I have run out of time. So thank you. That's all we have for today. A big thanks and shout out to Dateline, Lester Holt, and supervising producer Dan Slepian for reporting this story for a very long time and very thoroughly. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend. We'll be back next week because if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.